Let's talk launching. With dozens of launches under my belt, some six-figure and some total flops, I've learned a thing or two about what to do in a launch. And I have one thing that I do every single time. Let's talk about it. Hey y'all, I'm Kat. Welcome back to my channel. I am a biz coach and integrator for creatives, helping you make dreams and dailies happen. We are in a 8-week series here on YouTube talking all about launching, and I love talking about launching. I know that launching is not something every creative enjoys or even wants to do in their business. I loved launching. I have been an entrepreneur now for 8 years and I've launched dozens of things, whether that was in-person events, smaller retreats, large-scale conferences, digital products, courses, 2 different online shops. I've launched a lot. And over all of those launches, I've learned a lot of trial and error. Some of those launches have gone really well. Financially, they've brought in 5 or 6 figures, while other launches have not gone well and we've barely broken even or made it over what we spent in Facebook ads. So I understand how stressful it can be to step into a launch when you're not quite sure what's going to happen. But my hope is that while we're doing this series together, you're going to feel even more equipped about stepping into a launch in 2022. And in today's episode, I want to talk about one thing, just one thing that I do every single launch. It doesn't matter what the product is. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business. It doesn't matter when you're launching said product or service or website or whatever it is that you're launching. This is the one thing that you need to do regardless. And that is work backwards. I always work backwards when it comes to my launch plan. What does that mean and what does that look like? We're going to talk about it. So when I say work backwards, I mean that you need to select the launch date first, before you do anything else, before you get started thinking about priming content or thinking through even outlining the offer. You need to think about, when are you launching the product? Now, this doesn't mean that you need to chisel it in stone and not move that date at all if other things happen and you need to move the date. You are the CEO of your business, so you have the flexibility to be able to move things around if you need to move things around. However, setting that date, even if it's a penciled in with a question mark kind of date, setting that date allows you to really see the full plan. It's just like when you're planning a wedding, and now my background is in wedding planning. So it's just like when you're planning a wedding. You set the wedding date first. You find the venue, you set the date, and then you work backwards. And then you're picking out the dress and the flowers and the invitations and all of those other crazy fun pieces when it comes to wedding planning. Launch planning is very, very similar. So when you work backwards, you're going to set the launch date and then you're going to look at your calendar. So I love to use my own quarterly calendar, and you guys can see it massive hanging on the wall behind me. But I also love to pop it in a program called GoodNotes. This is an app that I have. I have it on my iPad and I have it on my phone. It's how I like to take notes now versus having pen and paper. I can put my quarterly calendar in GoodNotes and then I can write on it. I can be able to erase and pencil in, and it feels a little freer than like setting it in a Google Calendar. Sometimes Google Calendar can feel like so official, like, oh, it's there. This just feels like I'm taking notes, like I'm just brainstorming. I'm figuring out like, oh, okay, if I want to launch on March 24th, what is that going to look like working backwards? Or if I want to launch on April 10th, what does that look like working backwards? And it allows me to kind of play around with what that calendar would look like. So I highly recommend GoodNotes, and I'll link my quarterly calendar below if you are interested in taking a look at that. So you work backwards, you pick that date, and I just mentioned that 6 to 8 week time frame. 6 to 8 weeks is what I have found to be a sweet spot when it comes to getting ready for a launch. Next week, we're going to talk even more in depth about a full timeline. And that timeline really is dependent on your business and the product that you're launching. So 6 to 8 weeks is also not something that's chiseled in stone, but for the sake of this video, let's talk about the timeline being a 6 to 8 week timeline. So if I know I want to launch in beginning of April, I'm going to think backwards 6 to 8 weeks. So I want to plan ahead. Planning ahead looks like having that quarterly calendar so you do feel more prepared for the launch. So you set that date and then you start to think backwards. So let's go the full 8 weeks. Let's go 8 weeks back from that date. What will that look like? So let's take a look right now. Today is the 10th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8 weeks from now is actually going to be the first week of April. So if I were to say I want to launch a product the first week of April, from today until then, I have 8 weeks to do that. That allows me to figure out a couple of things in the launch planning process. It allows me to figure out my marketing, because marketing is key. We talked about content planning in last week's video, and I talked through priming content. We're going to get even more in depth with priming content over the next couple of weeks, but having that 8-week period allows you to have a strong, laser-focused marketing plan all around priming your audience for the launch. So that's one of the reasons why I love a 6 to 8 week time frame for the public-facing aspect of it. It also allows you 6 to 8 weeks to prep on the back end, especially if this is a product that you've never launched before, because you're likely doing product creation and getting things done on your end to get it ready to sell, to get it ready for market. So having that 8-week time frame allows you to then look at your schedule, carve out time right now, maybe take less client work, or know it's going to be a little bit more of a season of hustle as you get ready for that launch day, but you're okay with it because you've looked at your schedule, you've carved out that time, you know this 8-week period, and it's a season where you can say, yes, I am all in. This is the product I'm sending to launch. So those are reasons why working backwards is incredibly, incredibly helpful when it comes to setting the tone overall, setting the tone for your audience, and then setting the tone for yourself. If you guys have other questions about working backwards, what it might look like to set a date, or maybe you have questions about if you have to change a date when you're working for the launch, drop them in the comments and let me know. I would love to help, and I'm excited for next week's episode where we're going to talk even more fully about the full launch timeline and everything you should be expecting when it comes to your plan.